Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast, and today's interview is with Lyle Schlaffer. Oh, Penny's always been really fun to talk to, so I really enjoyed this interview. Penny had some unique things to say that I haven't heard yet, and I love that all of my guests just have so many different experiences because they grew up in different households in different places and have different interests. So it's really interesting. I was also thinking this week a lot about how simple life is right now, in a sense, because we're not, able to do as much. And in many ways, I really like it. Obviously, I don't like the situation we're in, but it forces people to be creative and make their own fun, just like we talk about all the time, that back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, everyone was making their own fun. We weren't as entertained as we are nowadays. So I've seen a lot of people outside, and when I go on my bike rides with my kid, it is just so refreshing and so peaceful, and get to say hi to the neighbors and see that people are actually being really creative with their time and getting yard work done and playing games and baking. I'm lucky enough to be able to live with some of my sisters at this point, and so we've been having a really good time together. We've had lots of movie nights. We've been going on picnics, playing soccer outside, and just entertaining each other. And it's been nice to have at least them around when you can't see other people. So I'm super grateful for that. So the simplicity of life right now has been on my mind. And then also, I just feel very grateful. I think hard times force me to be grateful for the things that I have. And so it's been kind of nice in some ways. I've thought a lot about the things that I'm grateful for, and I'm super grateful for what I have, and been faced with some trials that really make me think about what I do have. And so whatever comes at me will be hard and has been hard. Those things are really hard to deal with, but at least I have what I have. You know what I mean? Anyways, so those are my thoughts this week. And I am really excited for you guys to listen to this interview. Penny is, I just have always thought Penny was really cool. And so I'm really excited that she was willing to do this interview with me. So let's dive in. And my first question for you is, can you tell me a little bit more about your name?
My name was not very common, although there was another Penny in my high school. And my whole life, since there are not a lot of Pennies around, a lot of people just know me as Penny, and sometimes I didn't even have to put my last name. Like in a lot of classes, I just wrote Penny. And then I went through this phase during the 70s where I like to spell it different ways. So sometimes I spell it Penni, dot the I with a heart. I was thankful that my parents named me Penny because their other choice was Trudy. Trudy, I guess. And I apologize if anybody listening is named Trudy, but I really do not like that name, so I'm glad they named me Penny.
What was life like back in the 70s?
Oh my goodness, the 70s were just one of the very best decades. You had the best music. You had relative peace. The Vietnam War had ended. Life was just so happy. People were carefree. My friends and I were so happy. My parents were happy. It was just a pleasure growing up in the 70s.
What did you do for fun in the 70s?
No, that's a good question. Actually, I could go on about fun things. My friends and I loved to hang out. We liked to ride our bikes, and some of us had skateboards. That was another thing in the 70s. We had skateboards. In the 70s, it seems like there was kind of a really big push for kids to buy them. There were ads in stores, and I think ads on TV for skateboards, and so it's kind of getting popular then. And then, believe it or not, one thing I did for fun was I practiced the piano. I loved playing the piano. My reason was my piano teacher lived right across the street. So when it was time for me to go, I'd say, "Okay, Mom, I'm going." And I'd grab my books, go out the door, walk across the street, and there was my teacher, Mrs. Gambino. And she was so loving and so kind. She was from Italy. Aww. And I'd enter the house and she'd go, "Darling." So she was wonderful. She was very inspiring. And I never wanted to disappoint her. So one reason I always practiced was not to disappoint Mrs. Gambino. And I have to really say I'm glad that I was a people pleaser, because being a people pleaser, I wanted to please Mrs. Gambino. Therefore, I practiced all the time. Therefore, I felt like I advanced all the time, and I have to really be thankful that I can play the piano and teach piano. So that was one of the things I loved to do, was play the piano. When I was a teenager especially, I really enjoyed dating. For a while, I had a boyfriend named Mike, and for a while, I had a boyfriend named Rick. And we had a great time, and we were always very good and very innocent, and we'd go on little dates to the movie or to the pizza parlor. And some of my friends were Shelley and Ruth and Janice and Coral and Janet, and my friends were so fun. I always enjoyed them. I wasn't allowed to start really dating until I was 16, so when I was 16, 17, 18, that's when I was really into like a certain boyfriend. And yeah, my friends and I, we just hang out at each other's houses and listen to music. I should tell you about the music. Oh my goodness, some of the best music. So some of the bands were Hall & Oates, the Bee Gees, Bread, Chicago, the Doobie Brothers, Michael Jackson, Kiss, the Steve Miller Band, the Eagles, James Taylor, Casey and the Sunshine Band, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Commodores, Boston, and Aerosmith. Those were my favorites. That decade really produced some of the best bands, some of the best songs. We did have the LP records, the long playing, you had several songs. We had those kind of records. Those were really popular. And then for a while, this was probably earlier 70s, reel-to-reel tape recorders became popular. They didn't last a real long time for personal use, but I had one with these little reels, and then the cassette tapes came out, and those were really popular, so I had lots of cassette tapes. A lot of times my friends would come over, or I'd go over their house, and we'd put on one of the long BLP records, or we'd put on a cassette tape, and we'd just talk, or like we'd brush each other's hair, or paint each other's nails, or maybe we'd put on the music in the kitchen and we'd cook. We'd like to make treats together, and then we did like to make cookies. And I liked it when my friends could come over to my house, because in approximately, I want to say 1975 or 76, my mom had a lot of the kitchen redone, and so a popular color in the 70s was orange, and so we got bright orange countertops. And my dad put in a new window. There wasn't a window on one of the walls by the sink, and so he put in a new window there, and that kitchen was just beautiful. And my mom got really a state-of-the-art stove and oven combination for that time frame, and she loved that, and our kitchen was just so beautiful.
What were some popular activities?
My friends and I really loved our Barbie dolls, and because my house was not filled with a bunch of children, I was the youngest, and my brother next older than me was 7.5 years older than me, so I was kind of feeling like an only child. I loved my space. I loved my independence. So I would invite my friends over, and we'd set up boxes that we'd turn into little houses or furniture in the living room, Barbie doll size. My friends would come over, and we'd have this like Barbie party with all our little furniture that we had made, and we could leave it in the living room because my parents didn't care. And some of the items from the 60s in life were really perfected in the 70s, like the hula hoop. We had the hula hoop in the 70s. We had other things to play with. Were crafting things. So, like, I would buy at the little 5 and dime store. We didn't have dollar stores. We had 5 and dime stores. Because everything was so much cheaper. I would buy little squares of felt, and I'd go home and I'd cut shapes out, and I'd make things out of felt, and I'd make greeting cards with like felt cut out letters to make words on the greeting card.
Do you have any favorite memories from the 70s?
Some of my favorite memories are going on vacations. My dad loved to drive, and he wasn't afraid to drive really anywhere. We'd all pile in whatever car we had at the time. Sometimes, for a while, it was a Ford Falcon station wagon. And I'm trying to think what we had after that. In 1976, approximately, we got a Honda Accord, and at that time, it was just my mom and dad and myself, and we piled in that, and we drove across the whole entire country from California to Virginia, and we went there in Virginia to see my sister Sherry, who was there with her husband and kids, and they were in the Army. And then other vacations, we went up to Butte, Montana, because that's where my parents were from, and that's where all us kids were born. We'd go back to Butte almost every summer and visit my grandpa or my Auntie Bert and her family. So vacations are really some of my favorite memories. I also have memories of my mom being so nice to me and so giving. She sewed for me a lot, and one of my favorite memories is I would see a picture in a magazine or in a fashion catalog of an outfit that I liked, and I'd point to it, and my mom would say, I can make that, and she would proceed over the next couple of weeks to make that very outfit that I wanted, and I always felt very proud to wear these outfits that my mom made for me, and then she also taught me to sew.
What was the style like back in the 70s?
So in the 70s, we had lots of polyester. We also had bell-bottom pants. So I'm sure people have really, from any era, have probably seen bell-bottoms. And one of my favorite memories is my boyfriend and I both owned a pair of green plaid bell-bottom pants.
Wow.
And we'd both wear the same. So we'd be matching if we went to like a church activity or something. We'd both wear the green plaid bell bottom. And I would, a lot of times with mine, I'd wear a green turtleneck shirt with the green bell bottom pants. Long hair for girls and guys was very in style. For guys, they would have oftentimes hair like down to their, kind of down to the top of their shoulders. And then sideburns for guys were really popular, long sideburns. And then girls a lot of times had long hair. Towards 1976, 77, 78, it became in fashion for girls to feather their bangs. I had feathered bangs, and then by the time I graduated in 78, I had layers in my hair. So yeah, and not as much backcombing or teasing. That was more from the 60s. So in the 70s, it was more in style to have your hair kind of more flat or long or flat and feathered.
What made you happy back in the 70s?
I was the most happy when I was doing things with my family or my friends, and I was most happy when I could capture memories either in like a memory book or a photo album. So I was always doing like a scrapbook or memory book, and I'd put pictures and I'd write little things like a journal. I'd write little things of what we did. So I loved making memories and writing down memories with my family and friends. And also, I was happiest when I was reading my scriptures. I tried to read my scriptures, and I went to an early morning class that a lot of people will know. It's called seminary. I loved seminary. So those are some of the things that made me happy. I had a bird. He was a parakeet, and his name was Mr. Peepers, and he could say his name. He could say Mr. Peepers.
Were you ever scared, unhappy, or anxious?
Yes. So in the 70s, really, thankfully, as a whole, and me personally, we didn't have a lot of scary things going on in the world or in the United States or in my town. One thing that wasn't necessarily scary for me, but in about 1973, there was massive inflation in the world, much of it caused by an oil crisis that was happening in the Middle East, and the Arab nations were refusing to ship oil to countries that were supporting Israel. So the United States wasn't getting as much oil, therefore the gas lines at the gas stations were very long, price of like homes were very high, so it was kind of scary to a point, but me being a teenager, I wasn't as scared by that as maybe some fathers who were trying to support their families and earn an income. In the early 70s, way early, 70, 71, 72, I was kind of scared by the Vietnam War because that was still going on, but we officially pulled out as a country in 1972 or 73, I want to say. And so that was a relief. You know, people as a whole were not as scared by that anymore. I had a friend whose dad had been killed in Vietnam, so that was a relief to be done with that. So as a whole, I didn't have a lot of scary things happen to me in the 70s, and I was really thankful for that. In approximately 1973 or 74, I'd have to look up, but my grandpa died, and to me that really affected me because that was the first death of somebody close to me that I could really know what was going on. My previous years, like 1962, 63, 65, some other grandparents of mine had died, but I was very little.
How would you compare your childhood or teenage years to today's kids?
When I was alive in the 70s, that was, so I was 10 in 1970. In 1979, I was 19. So during that decade, we, as kids and teenagers, did not sit in front of a computer a lot. In fact, we really did not have computers. We went outside. We rode our bikes. We listened to music inside. We cooked. We did crafts. We got together and actually interacted and actually talked face to face. That was such a good thing back then. I know that kids today really love computers and love texting and other things, and it has its place. It really does. But so many kids and teenagers today don't get outside or do face-to-face interactions with other people. So I would say that in a lot of ways, in the 70s, kids were a little more carefree. We didn't have as much homework. It's really true. We didn't have as much homework as kids do today. So we had more time and took more time to do other things. We still were working towards maybe graduating and getting into a college, but the pressure to do that wasn't as high.
What brings you peace or calmness during hard times?
So during hard times, when I want to bring peace into my life, there are a few things that I do. For one thing, I will really try to commune with the heavens. I will try to make sure I pray every morning and every night because I cannot make it through hard times without God's help. Another thing that I do is I try to search for answers and wisdom in the scriptures, because that really, if you want to search the written word, that's the best place to go is the scriptures. And really, a lot of times you can find answers to literally anything in the scriptures. I love looking in the very back in the topical guide under topics, and then I will search and look up every scripture having to do with a certain topic, and that can really help us find answers. Another thing I do when times are hard is I definitely go and play the piano. I will play things by Beethoven. I will play things by Claude Debussy. Another thing I do is I'll listen to some of my favorite tunes on YouTube. One of my favorites is Whatever Tomorrow Brings, I Will Be There. I think that's by Incubus, I think. So those are the things that help me really hang in there if things get tough. So in 1971, Disney World opened in Orlando. And at the time, I lived in California. Mm-hmm. But right now, that's a big deal for me because I live in Florida, and I've been to Disney World in Orlando many times. In 1973, this was an unfortunate one in my opinion. In 1973, Roe versus Wade passed. In 1976, the Apple Computer Company was created. In 1978, I remember this, in 1978, the very first test tube baby was born. That was really big news back then. We thought that we had made it to the top of science.
One thing I really liked about Penny's interview is how she focused on memories and how she keeps track of memories. And I have a very awful memory, and so one thing that helps me to look back and actually remember certain parts of my life is because I brought it up enough times. I've thought about those moments in my life enough times, and also I've documented them in a journal or through photos. Otherwise, I usually forget. So I think this is super smart, and even though we think it takes up a lot of time and it's hard to do, we might really appreciate it looking back when we have it all documented and we can look back, whereas we might have forgotten otherwise. So I really enjoyed talking to Penny. I'm looking forward to the next couple of interviews. We are just gliding our way through the 70s, and that's really it for this week. So I hope you all have a wonderful time and find lots of creative things to do this week. And yeah, have a great week. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. Okay, so this week's embarrassing story is one that I am very embarrassed about. I was riding my bike today, and my husband told me before I went out that I should watch my pants because they're a little baggy. They're like khaki, baggy, comfy pants, and they're short enough. I was like, they're fine. They won't catch on anything. And so Zeke and I made it all the way down the cul-de-sac, and next thing I know, my pants are stuck in the bike. So I got off the bike without managing to fall or trip and sat there and tried pulling my pants out of the bike chain. They were super stuck in the bike chain, and it was not happening. So I did have to admit defeat and call my husband and ask him to come down the road with a pair of scissors. And he came, and he rescued me. And then we proceeded on our bike while my pants were half cut, and I rolled them up, and we didn't have that problem again. So it was pretty embarrassing, especially because a couple of cars drove by, and I'm just sitting on the side of the road with my kid. I'm stuck to a bike chain, and obviously it was stupid. So that was my embarrassing story for this week. I hope you guys all have a great week and looking forward to our next interview. Talk to you soon. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health or habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily, and I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health, and yeah, trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice, and I would love your input. So, what would you guys like to know?